The health of the television networks maintains its position at the top of this week's media news. Good evening. But we want to look at television from the consumer's and not the accountant's viewpoint. The big numbers of the Packer Regain 9 network weren't only its debt. The ratings once again favour 9, and none more starkly than for the 6 o'clock news. The Sydney viewing figures, and they're pretty typical for the mainland capitals, have 9's news audience at 36% and 10's at just 8%. Why? Is it quality? Can the National 9 News really be 4 or 5 times as good as the Bulletin on 10? Well, let's take last Friday night in Sydney. National 9 News kicked off with the end to the refuelers' strike.
First tankers rolled out to begin clearing the massive backlog.
So did 10.
1 p.m. at Sydney Airport, and for the first time since Tuesday, the tankers were rolling.
Bib and Bub. Second item on 9 was petrol prices, as it was on 10. But 10's coverage was vastly better. Scripted film, 3 interviews, and a political report. The Newsers parted company on their choice of the third item. 10 ran a short newsreader-only report about the Judicial Commission, while 9 ran the latest on prison mismanagement. 10 missed that story out, no doubt on the "our audience is sick of prison stories" rationale. That was a serious error of judgment. But both bulletins agreed on the fourth story.
The woman decided her son should be taught at home and that she was well able to conduct his schooling.
Lousy journalism from both. The story about a mother who kept her child away from school was a day old, and they had to pick it up from the morning papers. And talk about duplication.
Too young to cope with all that. A bit stressful. You know, if your child isn't quite ready, if you can be allowed to have a little extra time.
Both networks are keen to use the dispatches of their token presences in the United States, even if they only revoice American footage of irrelevant crime stories.
Students scrambled to free.
The last few minutes, the SWAT team came in and shot the hell out of us, and it was pretty gratifying to have that happen, let me tell you.
And there's more than a touch of prurience about both newsrooms.
He forced some of the women to strip and made the men have sex with them.
He was like, all the blonde girls, take off your pants. All the blonde girls in the bar. And he was like, do it, I'll kill the people who don't do it.
At 6, he was still being breastfed.
Linda chose to breastfeed Michael till he was 7, extending the bond between them.
10 had 2 more items than 9, but they shared British-Iranian reconciliation, more prurience.
However, the court has ruled that a person's biological sex cannot legally be altered.
The court decided that 36-year-old Carolyn Cossey was still a man, despite sex-change surgery.
The bomb found at the London Conference on Terrorism.
And he found out that what was stopping him fix the was his package.
In sport, there was nothing to choose between them.
Pushing it to the limit brought some unstuck.
Cars howl around the mountain.
And not for the first time, they shared the same closing item.
Scenes at the close of business this afternoon as the stock exchange let its hair down.
And there was really nothing to choose between their scripting, reporting and reading styles. Where divergences did occur, they were these. 10 ran a local fire solely for pictorial impact, then an ill-disguised PR piece on wastewater treatment, handout film and all, another overlong report on agricultural economics with a dreadful script.
Like their urban counterparts, the small businessmen known as farmers are sinking fast into the red.
And a Melbourne court story, newsworthy only because the victim was a pop star. 10 had no story on the Gulf crisis, while 9 gave it substantial treatment.
At the same time, Iraq has withdrawn its threat to hang foreigners caught in Baghdad embassies.
And 9 had a good story on secret postnatal AIDS testing.
We found that out of a sample of 10,000 of these babies, none of them was infected with the AIDS virus. So that means that none of their mothers was infected.
10 missed that one. Overall, 9 is the better news, but certainly not by a factor of 36 to 8. The answer must lie elsewhere, and the Media Watch theory is that it's all about incumbency. Brian Henderson's read the 9 News in Sydney since 1957. 10 has tried 5 newsreaders in the last 10 months. Hendo might not be any better than Eric Walters, but he's 5 times more recognisable. It's the same philosophy in Melbourne with Brian Naylor, and with 9 in Adelaide with Kevin Crease and Rob Kelvin. Let's not leave television news for a bit. How's this for effectual journalism?
Runner-up in the female tuna tossing section, Trudy Ainsbury, claims the winner, Heidi Whittish, should have been disqualified for falling over the starting line during competition heats.
It's this tuna toss by Heidi Whittish, in which she clearly falls over the line, that has sparked the protest. On the day, competition judges ruled that Heidi was allowed to continue in the contest, and she went on to win the women's section and $500 prize money with a record-breaking toss of 14.25 metres.
And there was a great deal more of it, all solemnly treated. Well, that was from the news provided on GTS BKN, an amalgamated service linking Port Pirie in South Australia and Broken Hill in New South Wales. 18 months ago, the Broadcasting Tribunal took action against the Broken Hill licensee for inadequate service to its area. But that's been bogged down in court proceedings ever since. And what's happened to the service in the interim? Well, not much in the view of Broken Hill City Council. Last month, the council resolved
to express its concern to the Broadcasting Tribunal about quality of local news services provided through the local commercial television station, particularly the lack of a same-day news service.
You might recall that we reported on Broken Hill Television early last year.
I'm more than happy with the rate at which the programming at BKN7 is improving. I would hasten to add, however, that there is still room for a great deal of improvement.
Now, the Mayor says, the station is at a lamentable stage, as does an anonymous writer to the Barrier Daily Truth.
How long do the public of this district have to put up with such shoddy treatment? GTS and BKN should do us a favour and cost-cut themselves right off the air.
In February, the Broken Hill station's sole journalist wrote in frustration to the same paper.
What Broken Hill people see on their television screens is old news, yesterday's stories, today. Purely because of funding, both of today's news stories are put on the bus, which goes all the way to Adelaide. Then they are freighted by courier to Port Pirie.
So much for the technology of immediacy. This is the result.
GTS BKN News with Phil Luke. Good evening.
Broken Hill's news service, in which the city far too often doesn't rate a mention.
Until the rain began falling last night, Jamestown's September average was a mere 16 millimetres.
4 Spencer Golf Schools have received a shot in the arm to help improve teaching technology.
Since opening 2 years ago this month, the Wadlata Outback Tourist Centre has been introducing more and more people to the bush.
Broken Hill is a very substantial generator of revenue for the licensee company, not that it shows. BKN now has no journalist. Maybe the present situation there epitomises the comment of Peter Westaway, acting chairman of the ABT.
The range of sanctions or directions that the tribunal could give were too limited for it to act effectively.
And yet they talk about further deregulation.